medicine. And that's the case with these bean sprouts. So these bean sprouts, since they were growing E. coli resistant bacteria to antibiotics, they actually killed a lot of people very quickly. And you also see other bacteria infections becoming antibiotic resistant, like with tuberculosis is a big one right now. Tuberculosis is a large killer of humans. You have things like staphylococcus or staph infections. These are all adapting very quickly, and we don't really have an answer for it with antibiotics just yet. So this is showing you the movement of bacteria, which is a prokaryote, to our eukaryote cells. So it's called the endosymbiotic theory. So endosymbiotic meaning inside and symbiosis. So this first cell you see here, this was an ancient prokaryote. And I can tell because inside the cell here, there's no nucleus. Now, whenever a prokaryote goes to copy itself, it's called binary fission, it usually makes one individual and copies it into two individuals. Okay, so it's very similar to mitosis, but it's called binary fission. Now, the hypothesis here is the ancient prokaryote actually still did binary fission, but instead of making a copy and a copy, two separates, it made a copy in a copy. So you had one cell like this, and when it made a copy, the first copy was made, and the second copy got trapped inside. So now you have a cell with a nucleus. And it's kind of similar because we know the nucleus is made of the same types of phospholipids as the cell membrane is. And then the second part of this theory goes to where our energy organelles come from. So as eukaryotes, there's two different energy organelles. You have mitochondria and chloroplast. So if this guy here, number two, is our ancient prokaryote with neither one, it's going to be going around trying to find food. Now, what happened here is it ingested this guy, that ancient mitochondria, and this mitochondria was meant to be digested for food, for energy. And what happened was, instead of digesting it down, it was more beneficial for that ancient prokaryote to keep it inside of its cell because ATP is produced by the mitochondria. So it was actually making it energy. So this is where the symbiosis part comes in. The the pre uh, proto mitochondria was getting housed inside the cell, so it was protected from other things, and then the mitochondria itself was producing ATP for that protection. And then very similar thing happened with the chloroplast. So there was an ancient bacteria, this green one here, that was ingested, and then it was meant to be broken down for food as energy, but instead of being kind of destroyed for food, it was kept around because it was beneficial. It was going through photosynthesis, it was making sugar for the cell, and the in terms of feeding, kind of paying rent, the cell was housing and protecting the mitochondria or the chloroplast. So it kind of happened twice. You have this guy here with the mitochondria, and then happened again with the chloroplast. And you kind of can see evidence for that with the nucleus, or the DNA inside the mitochondria, and also DNA inside the chloroplast. So they are the only two other organelles inside of a eukaryote cell that hold DNA. And the hypothesis there is since they have DNA, they used to be a free living entity outside of the cell and kind of supports the endosymbiosis theory. Okay, so that was it for the bacteria. Again, they're everywhere, very diverse. Um, Kind of have their own little subject too with microbiology. These guys here can also be talked about with microbiology. They're called protists. So protist or the protista family is going to be a eukaryotic cell. So all these cells that we're going to talk about now have a nucleus, but with prokaryotes, they are usually microscopic, or they don't really form complex tissue. They're usually colonial with just one cell for itself. First seen in the fossil record about 1.2 billion years ago, so way after the introduction of bacteria. This is a very diverse group of organisms too, because they have a lot of roles that kind of mimic other organisms. There are some that are plant-like, there are some that are animal-like, and there are some that are fungi-like. So the plant-like protists is one of the largest groups. These are called algae. So algae are believed by a lot of people to be a plant, but algae can't be a plant because algae do not form complex tissue. We have the protists or the animal-like protists. So these are the ones that kind of crawl around and just look for food. Very similar to the way animals have to move around and look for food. You're going to have amoebas mostly in that group. And there's also fungal-like protists. So these fungal-like protists act as decomposers, very similar to kind of mushrooms and molds do. Very similar looking to molds. So we'll see these when we work our way through the groups. What you see on the screen, all these are protists. So this guy here, Uh, number A, he's called Rosaria. So Rosaria are often referred to as living crystals. So it actually looks like sort of a rock or a crystal. They actually can make very small cellular skeletons. This one here is a ciliate paramecium. And over here, ignore the fish, but these big things in the background that look like plants, these are actually algae. And then those algae look like plants, but again, they're going to be protists because they don't form complex tissue. So very diverse group with the protists. It's kind of all over the place. These are called supergroups. So supergroups really aren't a true level of taxonomy. They're kind of a way to organize this very diverse group. Um, we'll walk through each one of these, but we have the excavata. So these are going to be individuals that do not have a mitochondria. So they're kind of either adapted for something else or their mitochondria have shrunken and they don't use them anymore. Chromoalveolatas are going to be like the brown algae and the kelps and the parameciums. Rosarias are those living crystals. Archaeoplastidia, ancient chloroplasts. These are going to be all the photosynthetic organisms that resemble plants. Amoebozoas are going to be the walking or crawling cells. And then the opisthocantas are going to be the animal and fungal-like cells. Again, very diverse group, kind of still in debate what group is where, what organism goes in what group, just based on these characteristics. We'll start with an easy one. We'll start with the Archaeoplastidias. So when I see the word Archaeoplastidia, I like to tell my students to break it down into its meanings. So archaea is Latin for old. So this is meaning old. And then plastidia is chloroplast. So it literally means old or ancient chloroplast. So these are the first individuals to kind of create chloroplasts. And these are going to be mostly your green algae, your colored algae. So with green algae, they appear green in color, and they appear green because they have two types of chlorophyll. So remember, chlorophyll is a pigment. Chloroplast is an organelle. So the chlorophyll is found in the chloroplast. We have A and B, so that's giving it its green color. And then if we're going to be using green color, I mean, if we're going to see green color, algae don't use it. They actually reflect that back at you, so they're using red and blues. There's two main types of the green algae. You have the charophytes group and the chlorophytes group. So charophytes are your freshwater algae. So if you go out into local rivers and streams or ponds and you have algae in those watery areas, that's going to be a freshwater algae and that's going to be a charophyte. If you go to oceans or saltwater areas and you see algae growing there, those are adapted for saltwater and those are going to be called chlorophytes. When we make it to plants, we'll probably make it to plants next week or whenever we meet next. But plants are estimated, or hypothesized, is a better word, to be descendants of algae. So all land plants are kind of derived here from the chlorophytes group. You also have red algae. So like the name suggests, these algae do not appear green when you look at them, they appear red. And the reason why they appear red is they are very deep in the ocean. So the deeper you go down in water, the less light is able to penetrate those layers. So the redness is coming from the fact that's the type of light that's making it to the bottom of the ocean. Very diverse group again. What you might recognize some red algae for is if you do make petri dishes, you do bacteria cultures and you get into that, the kind of jelly or gelatin stuff that we put in petri dishes, that comes from red algae. And then also corals, when we make it to animals, corals are going to be a symbiosis between an animal and an algae. And a lot of the algae inside of coral are red algae, along with the later on you'll see diatoms, dinoflagellates. Okay, we have our chromoalveolatas. So again, break down the words. Whenever you see chroma, that means colored. And then alveolata means air sac. So these are two big groups. You have your darker colored algae, like your golden algae and your brown algae. And then you have your individuals that form air sacs underneath their plasma membranes, like your ciliates and your parameciums. So we'll start with the chromoviolatas. They're also called straminophiles. So whenever you hear stramano or stramino, that means the brown, like the earth tones. So we have brown algae. Brown algae are large colonial protists. So if you go to the ocean and you see these large kelp forests or these large fucus forests, so these actually aren't plants. Again, they're going to be protists. If you eat sushi in that black seaweed wrap, so again, that's not plant. That's going to be a protist because it's coming from kelp and seaweed. Diatoms are going to be a organism that forms two plasma membranes stuck together, kind of a paired situation. They are notorious for being found on flowing water or moving water areas. So if you go to a creek or a stream and you notice that rocks are very slippery, more than likely the slippery surface is a result of diatom growth. Diatomaceous earth also comes from the name diatoms. So when the earth was covered in a very shallow pool of water, diatoms flourished. And then when the waters receded, all those diatoms died. And that gave us that diatomaceous earth that we have now. Another group, or member of this group, water molds. So water molds resemble the fungal group. They kind of look like mold growing on something. But besides being a fungus, it doesn't meet some of the requirements that all fungus need to meet. So example here with this leaf, those yellow spots growing on the leaf are being caused by a water mold. They usually affect a lot of plant growth. If you have studied the Irish potato famine, this is a very big catastrophe in Ireland where when they relied on their potatoes to get them through the winter, a lot of the potatoes didn't make it to harvesting because they were rotting in the fields. And they thought that rot was coming from water or not water moles, fungus growing in the soil, but actually it was a very damp year that year and there was too much water in the soil, and these water molds grew and destroyed the entire potato crops. Okay, so these are the alveolatas. So alveolatas are going to be organisms with little air sacs underneath their plasma membrane. So I can show you a video here in a minute with paramecium. I think we might have looked at it earlier in the semester, but with the paramecium, they have cilia on the outside of their cells. But if you look underneath their plasma membrane, they have these little vesicles, and these little vesicles, what gives them the name air sacs or alveolatas. That's the kind of the go-to example, but you also have dinoflagellates. So a dinoflagellate is going to be an individual with two flagella. So it has one flagella that goes out, and that's going to be used for swimming. It also has a flagella that wraps around the cell like this, and that's going to be used like a rudder. So it's able to turn and propel itself through water with its two flagella. Um, The image at the top of the screen, this is going back to coral again. So this is a zoomed up version of coral. So there's one component in coral that's an animal component, and it's growing most of that tissue. So all those little extensions you see, and then the structure itself are being produced by the animal component. And the colored part, that yellow gold color, that's coming from a dinoflagellate, sort of like algae. It's being housed inside the coral structure, and then it's going through photosynthesis and it's feeding the coral animal component, giving it kind of a rent for building the structure and protecting it. Another thing that dinoflagellates are kind of infamous for are these things known as red tides. So red tides are when like a lot of nutrients maybe run off from fertilizers run to the ocean, and all these fertilizers build up in the pool of water. The dinoflagellates can use those fertilizers, and they grow out of control very quickly, like it's got a bloom, And with that bloom, they start producing a chemical that is toxic to the local wildlife. So with the red tide, it's going to wipe out or devastate the entire kind of aquatic life in that area because of all those toxins killing the wildlife produced by those diatoms. The diatoms, dinoflagellates. Apoplexins, that last one down there, are also aviolatas. These are very small. They're mostly parasitic, and they have this thing called an apoclast. So apoclasts are kind of like a syringe. And with this syringe, they're able to puncture a hole in the cell membrane, and then they're able to enter the cell membrane. So I'm pretty sure everybody's heard of malaria, right? So malaria is a protist, and it's going to be a apoplexin. So these cells you see at the bottom here, these are all blood cells. Now, inside of these blood cells is living a protist, the malaria protist. It actually was transmitted by a mosquito bite. So mosquitoes themselves can't get malaria, but they are able to transfer malaria. They're called vectors. And I think we talked about the sickle cell anemia, right? So these cells here, these red blood cells, are kind of circular, like a red blood cell should be. Individuals that live on the malaria belt, most individuals are kind of heterozygous for sickle cell anemia, so they'll have much more oblong blood cells, and those protists can't actually invade that oblong cell. They're protected from it. Oops, how the hell did that stay on there? Huh, that's weird. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Another weird little protist here. These are excavatas. So excavatas are going to be organisms that either have no mitochondria, they kind of got rid of them, or the mitochondria have shrunken so much that they're not really being used anymore. Euglenoids, very good example. So euglenoids are freshwater organisms. They have a flagella too, so they're motile. What's interesting about these guys is they go through photosynthesis, so they need to be around sunlight, and they have this thing that's a kind of a where'd he go? Kind of a primitive eye. It's called an eye spot. So this eye spot, it can pick up light. So if it's in a dark area and all of a sudden it can sense light, it can go towards that light source because it can sense it, and that's going to increase its photosynthetic rate, make it better at photosynthesis. We'll skip those middle two and we'll jump to the kinetoplastids. So kinetoplastids is what you see at the bottom of the screen. Again, we're looking at red blood cells with these circular cells. And this wormy looking structure here, this is a chinoplastid. You can tell it's also a protist because see that dark spot in the middle, these dark spots are nuclei. So we know that they're eukaryotes because they have nuclei, not bacteria. So these guys, since they don't have mitochondria, they need a readily source of oxygen. They need it right then. And what they're doing is they're actually sapping this oxygen from the blood cells. This is causing a sickness called the African sleeping syndrome or African sleeping disease. What is going on is since they're sapping the oxygen from the blood, there's one organ in the body that needs oxygen, like constantly needs oxygen nonstop, and that's going to be the brain. So since the brain isn't getting enough oxygen as it needs, the individual is going to go into a coma, and that's why it's called the African sleeping disease. It's another protist that's transmitted by the bite of an insect. So the tsetse fly transmit this disease. So if anybody gets bit by a tsetse fly, the tsetse fly itself, again, it's not being affected by the disease. It's just transferring the disease around as it bites other organisms. Okay, then we have the amoebozoas and the opisthoconstas. So these are two large groups. The amoebozoas, if you don't know, zoa, whenever you see ZOA, that is referring to animal. So this is kind of an animal-like cell. And the reason why we call it an animal-like cell is they have the ability to move. They crawl along the surface of whatever they are on. And this first one here, the amoebas with amoeboids, They crawl around with a pseudopod. So with a pseudopod, they can actually eject out some of their cytoplasm of their cell. They can use it as like a finger, and then they can anchor that to the surface, and then they can pull the rest of their plasma membrane to that point. So it's literally using its own plasma membrane to crawl around with. And then as it crawls around on surfaces, whatever it comes across or rolls across and it thinks it's food, it's going to try to eat it. So that is literally like the blob. You ever seen the movie The Blob? It just rolls around whatever it uh, pulls in, it tries to eat. Most amoebas are not disease causing. There is a couple though. There is one here locally around us. It's called the brain eating amoeba. So it actually lives in stagnant water. And if somebody goes swimming in this stagnant water, they can get this brain eating amoeba. Um, Slime molds. So another type of crawling cell. These are more like fungus than they are animals. So most of the time, slime molds are going to be a large decomposer of plant material like wood or cellulose. So if you see it's like a ooey gooey substance that grows on plants, particularly like logs or something, that's more than likely a slime mold. And they do also have the ability to crawl. So let's say that they're growing on a tree trunk and they pretty much have broken down that tree to nothing that they can use anymore. So very slowly, these cells can kind of move and crawl on the forest floor. It could take weeks or days, but they can eventually find another source of food. Very cool, like primitive reproductive system. So if they do get a disease, these cells have something called a sentinel cell. Sentinel cells will purposely get infected by whatever's going around, and instead of um, staying in the group, passing that disease around, the sentinel cells will travel away from that large group, and they die away from the group. That way, that whatever's pathogen they have dies with them. It's kind of similar to what our immune system is. Some of our immune cells would do that. They'll destroy themselves in order to protect the other cells around them. And then we have the opisthocanta. So the opisthecantas are going to be animal-like cells. These are the closest thing to the animal kingdom. So we have sponges. Sponges are technically animals, but there are groups of cells that resemble sponges, and those individuals are going to be the true opisthecantas. They're called quinoflagellates. Okay, then we have Rhizaria. So with rhizarias, these are the coolest ones in my opinion. Going back to the very first image I showed you, these are referred to as living crystals. So if you zoom in, they're only seen with a not my glass, a microscope. And then when they're looking at their cell membranes, they're going to have these crystallized looking patterns because they grow with a limestone similar, or not limestone, yeah, calcium carbonate, basically limestone, skeleton around their cells. So very similar to the way you make bone, right? You make bone, but these individuals make a skeleton that goes around the individual cell. Very good at fossilization. So when they die, that calcium carbonate skeleton is going to fossilize very well. So you can see these guys um, in the fossil layers if you're looking for them. Okay, we'll move on to fungus. So with fungus, this is its own kingdom. This is the first eukaryote multicellular organism we're going to look at. And it's kind of thrown into this group because there are some unicellular fungus. So the main thing with a fungus is, well, I'll tell you in a second. Um, Most of them are going to feed the same way. We have heterotrophs, meaning that there is no fungus out there that we know of that is photosynthetic. This is one reason why we can't say that fungus are plants, because all plants have to be photosynthetic. There's not one fungus out there that can make anything from sunlight. Most are going to feed saprotrophically, meaning that they're going to be the decomposers. With a saprotroph, they actually excrete out a digestive juice from their cells. They break it down on the outside, and then after it breaks down, they reabsorb. So it's opposite of what we do as animals. We ingest and then break down in our bodies. These guys spit out, break down outside, and then reabsorb after they break it down. And then all these guys you see on the screen are fungus. We have mushrooms. We have this sac fungus here. And then this is also a sac fungus. These are yeast cells. Okay, so fungi have to, okay, they don't have to be. Most fungi are multicellular. There are a few exceptions where you have some unicellular fungus. Every fungus, though, needs to have a hyphae. And then with hypha, you're going to resemble plant roots. So again, this is why a lot of people think fungus are plants. But let's say you have a soil, right? This is your soil layer. I'll do a mushroom. So with the mushroom, underneath it, we'll get to the mushrooms later, but that's actually the reproductive structure. Underneath the mushroom, inside the soil or inside the wood, whatever you're looking at, there are these long white threads. Okay, these long white threads, these are called hypha. And then the collection of hypha, that's the actual fungus. So each individual strands of hypha, but if I was to circle this entire area, that entire area is the fungus. And that is called a mycelium. So myce is going to be a recognizable name with fungus because of mycelium. Now, what you see in the petri dish, this is the way a fungus will grow. So when it started out here in the middle of the petri dish. And then from there, it produces hypha. So these little kind of lines you see, and they're kind of fuzzy tips at the end, all those are individual hypha. Now, the entire thing, that is going to be the true fungus, and that is called a mycelium.
Professor Ken,
Yes.
quick question.
Uh-huh.
So, some of the fungi also grow in human skin. Am I correct?
Yes. Correct.
Are we going to call it cancer?
No, no, it's a parasite. Yeah, we're going to call that a parasite. Just like bacteria growing in you, or just like a virus growing in you, we're going to consider anything that's living and that's feeding off of a human host as a parasite.
Okay.
That
So,
makes
what
sense?
is the reason all these fungi can grow in human skin?
So they're very well adapted to us. Again, our skin is mostly acidic. So what's very scary is if you were to just take a breath in and breathe out, you're going to breathe in so many fungal spores. It's crazy how many fungal spores you breathe in every time you take a breath. So most fungus like that it doesn't grow in our body because our body's immune system destroys the fungus. So that's on the inside of our body. On the outside of our skin likes to stay very acidic. So when we excrete sweat and oil, it's below that of neutral water. So when
Mm,
bacteria and fungal spores land on our skin, normally they're going to die from that acid. But with ringworm,
mhm.
you're talking about ringworm, it's a specialized fungus that can withstand that pH. And since it can withstand that pH, it thrives on our skin.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
some will adapt, right?
Hmm.
Some will adapt and they survive, and
Yep.
that will cause a lot of problem. That the reason why we get, this skin doctor, right? What do you call it? Skin doctor?
Dermatologist.
Dermatologist make
Hmm.
money. How they make money, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, they make money off of
Okay.
just like this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, guys. So this is the thing, okay? Why we learn all of this stuff? If you guys want to be a doctor, this is the basic that you need to know. Okay. So if you look at that, people think that the earth, the world that we're living in, is very safe. It's not, okay? That the reason why we need to take a bath. If you don't take a bath in 1 month, this thing will grow crazy. Am I correct, Prof?
That's true, yeah. So washing off does help kind of prevent the fungus. Um, if you do get it though, it's kind of established already and it's harder to get rid of once you get it. You can't take
Mm.
medicine for it. Yeah, you can't take medicine for it, but it's kind of hard to get rid of once you get it.
Oh, wow. Scary.
And I got pictures of
Okay.
it later too. So we'll bring that back up and I'll bring it back up when I see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, great.
again, Fungus should not be photosynthetic. They do not contain chloroplasts, so we can't say a fungus and a plant are related to each other. Um, However, we can say fungus and animals are kind of closely related because of several reasons. One is plants make cellulose and they use that cellulose for fiber. Humans can't make cellulose. Humans make I mean not starches. They make glycogen, and fungus cells also do too. So whenever they kind of store nutrients away for later, they don't make fibers. They make glycogen, and then with glycogen, they can break it off just like animals do. They also have the ability to make chitin. So chitin is a carbohydrate very similar to what's in insect husks. So insects are actually very nutritious. Their husks are loaded with carbohydrates. Same thing with these cells inside the fungus. They have cell walls um but they have cell walls like plants, but the cell walls are made of chitin, not cellulose. And most fungi are not going to be motile. There is one exception. I'll say it when I get to it. But most fungus cells are going to be um, non-flagellated and they can't move through like an aqueous media if they go to water. Um, so this first fungal group we'll talk about are microsporidians. These are very rare in humans. So a microsporidian is going to be a very small fungus, and they actually live inside of cells. So they have hypha. They still do the secretion and then digestion method that way, but they feed off on the inside of cells instead of the outside of a cell. Most of these are going to be insect infectors or small mammal infectors. If a human was to be infected by a microsporidian, it's more than likely due to the fact that they have a very poor immune system. So again, we're breathing in fungal spores all the time. Fungus just love to reproduce and produce spores. So whenever you breathe in spores, you have your immune system destroy those spores so they can't grow in your body. If somebody has weaker immune system, like born with a weak immune system, or if they develop AIDS, which destroys their immune system, you will see individuals with microsporidians, and it could be life-threatening too. A lot of fungus infection is what kills people with AIDS. Okay, chytrids are another type of fungus. These are the only ones with the flagella, so these are the exceptions I was just talking about. These guys love to infect aquatic life. So if you live in the water, um, you have a risk of being affected with chytrids. So fish and amphibians, stuff like that. What's interesting is one special chytrid here in the U.S. It evolved and adapted to frogs. And there was this area, it's in the Southwest, it's like Nevada-ish area, that they kept hearing these little explosions. They knew stuff was blowing up, like balloons popping, right? And they could never figure, or it took them a while to figure out what's going on. But what it was is this chytrid was killing off the local frog population, and as the frogs were dying from the fungus was just sapping all the water from the frogs, and the frogs were getting tighter and tighter and tighter because of the air was trapped inside of their abdomens. And eventually they got so tight that they were blowing up. So the frogs were actually exploding in these areas with ponds because they were dying so much from this fungus. Okay, zygomycotas. You might recognize these. So a zygomycota is a fungus that produces a true zygote. So when fungus reproduce, we're not going to go into this too much, but they can form a special cell that doesn't have to fuse. So they can have a long cell like this, and then one nucleus and one nucleus. So say that's the mother and egg, or mother and grain, the mother and father cell. Instead of fusing together to make a true zygote, they can actually hold those cells separate for a very long time. But with the zygomycosis, whenever they fuse, they make a zygote right then. So there's no time between holding the two cells separate. A really good example of zygomycota is bread mold. So, well, a lot of people, when they see bread mold, they see the green, right? So what you're actually looking at is the reproductive structures of the mold. So if I was to draw the bread itself, the bread mold, the hypha for the bread mold is actually inside the bread. So all these lines here, these are the hypha, and they grow first. And then after the hypha form, they're going to want to reproduce. So when they reproduce, they're going to make these structures called stolons and sporangiophores. So what's inside the bread with the hypha? These are rhizoids. Coming off, you're going to see these little hairs coming out of the bread. So those are stolons. And then at the very tips of these stolons, you're going to have these big black dots. So the big black dots are the sporangiophores. So we're actually zoomed in on those down here. So again, this bottom area is where the bread's at. These white structures, those are the stolons, and these big black balls, those are sporangiophores. So the sporangiophores' job are to produce spores. So whenever they're ready, they produce these spores. They're going to blow up, and these spores are released into the atmosphere. Wind takes them away, the air current takes them away, and hopefully they'll land on something that they can grow on. So this is why we have to package our foods. So if we didn't package our foods, these spores that are just constantly being bombarded and land on the surface of things, they will eventually land on our food, and that would spoil our food. And the same thing with your body, you breathe in these spores all the time, but your immune system destroys them before you have to worry about them. Glomeromycota. So these are very special fungus. They are going to be what are called symbiotic with plants. So a lot of plants, they can't break down the material in the soil for use. So you have a relationship here. So let's say that this long structure is a plant root, and then over here you're going to have a hypha, and then these two are going to grow together, and the fungus is over here. So the fungus is going to take stuff from the soil, like dead matter that the plant can't use. It'll break down that dead matter into usable material, and it pumps it over into the plant. The plant can use that material, and then in return for giving it the material, the plant will give some of the sugar it makes by photosynthesis back to the fungus. So they're in a mutualistic relationship. A lot of plants, if you were to remove the fungus, the plant's going to die because it can't get the materials it needs in order to go through photosynthesis. And if you buy fertilizer for your plants, the fertilizer itself might actually have the Glomeromycota hyphae in there as well. That way it'll benefit the plant with the fertilizer. Okay. Ascomycota is the sac fungus. These guys are going to reproduce in structures with that resemble large sacs. These are one of the most diverse fungus. They have a huge ecological role for many reasons. They can form a range from mutualistic to parasitic, so good versus bad. A lot of these organisms can be used as food, so bottom of the food chain. They're going to be decomposers, recyclers of nutrients back into the system, and medicine. A lot of medicines that we use are coming from the Ascomycota, so you might recognize one of these in a second. Now, this one I have in the middle, this is called a moral. So with morals, some people might want to call it a truffle, but these guys here can go for thousands of dollars. They're considered delicacies, right? So during the fall in the US, they have morel or truffle hunting season. They go around in the woods with pigs, and the pigs can smell these truffles, and somebody can make a year's worth of salary by just hunting for truffles in 1 to 2 weeks. So sticking on the Ascomycota, some important things that they do, right? Food industry, we just talked about this, but one reason that we package our foods is fungal spores. So notice the orange up here and the grape. So what you see with the white, that's the hypha of fungus. So these hyphas are infecting the fruit and eating the fruit for themselves. Again, if we didn't have packaged foods, more than likely a lot of the food would spoil in the grocery stores. Let's see, soy sauces or fermentation. A lot of fermentation can be done by um, yeast, fungus. So soy sauces, some beers, alcohols, cheeses can all be made by fungus if you eat cheese. Diseases and like human diseases. So again, vaginal infections, athlete's foot, jock itch, ringworm, all those are caused by a fungus. So this is what Harry was talking about a second ago. this round structure you see here, we call it ringworm here. And a lot of people think it's a worm, but it's not. It's actually a fungus caused infection. So, right in the middle, this is where the fungus originated. And with the hyphae that are growing out, notice it looks like a circle, right? The hyphae are growing out in a radius, causing the circle-like appearance. So as the hyphae continue to grow, the circle is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I asked my class is, but do you think an antibiotic will help with this ringworm infection? What do you think? Antibiotic with a fungus? You think that'll have any effect? Well, it wouldn't because antibiotics only work on bacteria. And since this is a fungal infection, you'd have to go to a medicine like an antifungal. So antifungal will only work on fungus. Over here with this image, the white spots you see in this person's x-ray, those are going to be fungal infections that have set up inside the lungs. So again, normally with us, our immune system would destroy that. So this person who has this lung infection has a very weak immune system, or that's a very strong fungus. Um, what's interesting is the Ascomycosis, they have a special type of fungus that just infects insects. But what's special about this is called the zombie fungus. So the zombie fungus, when it affects the insect, it will cause the insect to do weird things. So it takes control of the insect's body, and it usually makes it die in an area above the colony, high above the colony. That way, when the fungus hits reproductive stage and produces spores, all those spores are going to be right above the colony, and they're going to come down and trickle onto the individuals in that colony. Again, we don't really have to worry about that right now. Hopefully, a fungus never evolves that specific for humans with our immune system. And really important benefit, penicillin. So going back to that orange, the fungus actually on that orange is the fungus that was discovered with penicillin. So that individual fungus was producing the molecule that we harvested as an antibiotic that started the whole process of killing bacteria for us.
So when human suck the air, when they breathe with all the spore, that
Mm-hmm.
what the COVID
Mm,
coming as well.
it could, yes. So fungal spores could produce phlegm. Yes, that could be. It could cause allergens. It could cause mucus, but it shouldn't be growing in you. If they're growing in you, the fungus spores are. There's something either wrong with your immune system or it's a very strong fungus.
So how
Um,
effective it is when
yes.
people put you know, during the COVID, people put something in their mouth when they breathe. Is that effective at all?
Say that again.
You see that we need to put the during the COVID,
Uh-huh.
okay? We need to put, on our nose, we wear
Oh,
what they call it.
you talking about a mask, like a
Yeah, we wear the
PPE?
mask. Is that
Yeah.
effective at all?
For it wouldn't really be effective for fungal spores because everybody's exposed to those. What the mask is doing is if you have like a viral infection or a bacterial infection, the mask should capture most of those particles. But if you
Mm,
have again a fungal infection, it should be very rare, and
mm-hmm.
everybody's also already exposed to fungal spores when they breathe air. But it is very
Mm-hmm.
effective for keeping infection down with viruses and bacteria because those infections are growing in the person and only should be found in the person.
So when it come to a lung, right? They get, from the air, they get into our lung. So what happened?
Mhm.
How the body react on it? It attack it?
It does. So our immune system works by several layers of protection. The first one in your lungs is mucus. So whenever you breathe in spores, you have your the mucus in your
Mucus.
nose, the mucus in the throat, the
Yeah, yeah,
lungs. All
yeah.
that mucus is capturing those spores. And again, there's really no way that fungus spores should be able to grow in the mucus. Fungal
Mm,
spores like damp, cold places. So our bodies are
mm.
warm, not
Yeah,
cold.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And then we have also our immune cells, like white blood cells and macrophages that are inside of the mucus. They're starting to
Mm,
break down the spores for us in the mucus. So
right,
whenever you do cough or produce phlegm or what we do with a lot of the mucus in our throat and lungs is we pull it back up and then we swallow it. And we don't really realize we do that, but we do. We pull it back up and we swallow it. And then when you swallow it, that goes down to your stomach acid and your stomach destroys it.
right, right. So
Hmm.
the mucus and all of that, and the nose hair is the first defense.
That's the
Now,
first of it.
right. Some people,
You
all the
muted.
hair. Yeah,
Oh,
is that bad idea?
if they cut their nose hairs? It's not a smart idea. Your nose, think about your nose hairs as being your own personal mask. So the
Yes,
hairier the nose or the hairier density
the
inside the
better,
nose,
right?
yeah, the better. It's gonna
But people
trap and
clean
capture
it
things
up.
better. When people shave or wax their nose hairs, they're just
Yeah.
opening up more for pathogen
Oh,
entry.
infection.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep, that's what they're doing. It's
So
kind of
this is
like
the kind of simple thing.
yeah.
Well done.
And then Basidium mycotas. So with the Basidium mycotas, these are the ones most people recognize as being a mushroom or fungus. So these are the mushrooms. They're also the puff balls and the shelf fungus that grow on trees. They reproduce with structures called basidiums. So the basidiums are the club-like structures of this stalk of this mushroom, basidium, and then the basidiocarp is the area where you produce spores. So this is referred to as a toadstool. If I was to look underneath that, like on this side of the toadstool, I'm going to see looks like gills. And those gills are mass producing spores. Spores, wow, spores. And again, those spores just constantly pumped out, and hopefully those spores land on something that is good for growing. Um, Most of the Basidium mycotas do not form parasitic relationships. They're mostly saprotrophs. There are a few though. We have the smuts and the rusts. So if you do notice plant leaves and they have a brown metallic looking structure on them, it kind of looks like rust. That's going to be a fungus, and that fungus is destroying the leaf. A smut is kind of a mushroom that grows in corn. It does have the ability to kind of take over and destroy a corn crop. But very recently, I learned that these smuts are delicacies in some places. They are technically like a mushroom, so people eat them. And if you were to look at them, do not look anywhere near appealing to eat. Um, let's see. If you know what a fairy ring is, I got another image. Let me find it. Let me stop sharing that for a second. Fairy rings are really interesting. Let's see. It's going to be my Campbell text. Here they are. So that's what I was talking about. This guy down here, that's referred to as corn smut. So it's going to be a fungus like a mushroom, and it will destroy the corn crop, but some people will want to eat that. They would rather eat that over the corn. And then this here is going to be a fairy ring. So fairy rings are where mushrooms appear to grow in a perfect circle. So it kind of makes sense if you think about the way a fungus is formed now. So with this fungus, right in the middle of this area, that's where the fungus started. And notice how it's with the tree. So it's actually kind of in a relationship with the tree, symbiotic. And there you have the hypha. So the hypha is going to be creating this large circle, and the edges of the hypha, that's where you're going to have all the mushroom growth. So a lot of people think it just forms in a circle because of mystical reasons, but it's just forming a circle because that's the area of the mycelium. Um, what's interesting is some mycelium, like that circle there, they can actually be as big as the entire forest. So there is one forest here in the US that they consider it a one fungus because it's the same mycelium that has spread through the entire forest. Lichens, you might recognize these two. So lichens are these structures here on trees. So lichens like a coral, it's going to have an algal component, but a fungal component instead of an animal component. So the fungal component is allowing the fungus to grow out of water. So normally I'm not fungus, algae out of water because algae needs to have water in order to survive. So with here, the algal component is going through photosynthesis, and the fungus component is getting fed by keeping the algae alive and out of water. Anybody have any questions?
No, bro.
That's all I had for tonight. Um, Harry, next week's Thanksgiving, so it's okay to skip next week, right?
Yeah.
Do they celebrate Thanksgiving too? How does that work?
Go ahead, Alfonso. Explain.
I think he froze.
Yeah.
No, he's there. He's there.
Yeah. I yes, yes.
So
What
what is the plan in December? When are you guys will have the exam?
I have an exam at December.
Okay. So December what? 15?
Uh,
Is that in the December? When did the school stop?
the school,
When did
I guess,
vacation?
6 December. I guess.
Yeah. When did the December start
The sixth.
vacation? So what is your plan, Professor Pan?
Um, well, what I was thinking was next week, is Thanksgiving, so I'll have family here. But the following
Okay.
week would be December the 6th, right? I think
Okay.
it's
So next
the
week,
6th.
no class, right?
Yeah, I can meet on the 6th if they're not testing, if they want to do one final lecture for the semester.
Okay. December 6th. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine with
You will
them.
have class. We'll meet
Mhm.
again.
Yep. And I can do
Okay.
plants. That'll be fine.
Okay. And then, guys, after you finish your school work, Professor Pence will write something to assess how far did you go. Okay. My goodness. What about the notes? It is available for them?
Um, yes, the book is. I can give I don't know how you may do
The
the entire
ebook,
semester. I can
the
do
ebook,
ebook. Yeah, the ebook is still available.
yeah. By chapter, you don't need maybe not need to give the whole book, only the
Yeah, because
chapter.
we've pretty much have gone up to chapter I think 14.
Wow, chapter 14 already.
Yeah, we've had
In a
16 lectures
college.
here. Yep,
Yeah,
college.
yeah, it is a college material, guys. Okay. So you guys need to be very pat, on the back, very proud of yourself because you learn a college, biology, they call it gen bio here. Okay.
Yep.
Unbelievable, guys. All right. So what you need just to keep it up. Okay. Keep it up. Just moving along. So after 14 January, we will start 15, 16. By the time you are in middle school, I think you are ready to take the AP bio. How about that, Professor Pence? AP
I mean,
Bio.
it would make sense, yeah.
Do you think they are ready?
I mean, I can make some questions for them, and then I can see from their answers if I think they're ready.
Right, right. So it is totally incredible, okay? If you guys, let's suppose that only one passed AP Bio, okay? AP Bio when you are still at high school, not high school even, okay, middle school kid. That will bring you to Harvard, will it not, Professor Pence?
Yeah, AP classes are very, very, um, what's the word I'm looking
Demanding.
for? Yeah, they're impressive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So keep it up. Not too many people have this kind of opportunity. And this is a Thanksgiving season in the US. So you guys can say thank you to Professor Pence that have time, okay, volunteer his time to teach and to help you to move along. Okay? Yeah. A small gesture. Just say hi, just say thank you. It start with Alfonso. Okay? Alfonso, what do you want to tell Professor Pence?
Um, Thank you very much to make me that so I can understand about the something that yeah like for health and for about the inside kind of
You're
yeah.
welcome. You're
So
welcome very much.
Okay, that's good. Inna, you have anything to say? Honey? Noel always yeah,
silent.
come and go. Okay, go ahead. Anybody, Honey or Inda? So, so Inda is the one that always come to class, right?
Yes,
Okay,
I've
she also
recognized
want
several
to
of
be a
them.
doctor. Okay, and also Honey. So there are three of them, but Noel come and it kind of come and go, come and go. But we have three. Okay. Now remember this: you are the smartest kid, in your class at school. But be humble. Okay, be humble. All right. Well, with that in mind, uh, it's already 8 o'clock. We say thank
Yeah,
you, Professor
I'm gonna
Pence.
jump off and let y'all get this next class started. How about that?
Okay, that sounds good.
All right,
Okay,
see y'all
study,
later.
guys.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Okay, and
All right.
I'll leave.
Now we have Lao Sư Đề Pha, ni hao à?
你好，
Ờ, Cúng chùa cho mấy ăn, hơn mama.
我很忙。
Okay, so Aaron, where's Aaron? Aaron,
Here.
okay. Don't play with the light, okay?
Okay.
Do not just have a simple light, okay?
Okay.
So Lause Desember ujian tanggal berapa di Untar?
Tanggal 9 sampai 13, Sir.
Mhm. Lause rencana ada kelas?
Sepertinya nanti yang tanggal 7 ya. 7 sama 14
Mei ya, Wak?
Mei ya.
Ya.
Jadi Desember awal itu mungkin nggak ada kelas.
Oke. 7, 14, oke, everyone write it down. 7, 14 tidak ada.
Ya.
Oke. Habis itu ada ya Lause.
Habis itu ada ya.
Ya. 7, 14. Oke, oke, oke. Oke. Jadi mulai lagi 21 ya Lause ya.
Betul.
Ya, itu ya.
Itu ya, itu.
Jadi kalau sehari ikut Lause punya ini sering-sering sehari juga udah bisa ngomong ini. Tapi nulisnya belum bisa. Karena sehari hanya dengar-dengar itu ngomong, ikut-ikut ngomong sama teman-teman itu.
Iya,
Jadi,
itu juga membantu sih.
iya, iya, iya. Dan juga kita tanggal 12 mungkin anak-anak ikut HSK ini ujian. Kita lagi cari Lause link yang tahu bagaimana mendaftar, tapi kita belum dapat update lagi dari dia. Ya.
Oke.
Nah, ini kan HSK 0 ya, yang ini yang sekarang ini. HSK
Iya,
0,
betul.
jadi mereka belum siap. Tapi nggak apa-apa belajar terus gitu. Dan Lause udah tahu ya bahwa kita juga sudah ada anu sudah nambah lagi bahasa
Iya,
Prancis
aku sudah baca.
ya. Nah, jadi kita berkembang terus saja ini berkembangnya luar biasa ini
Iya,
ya. Nah, tentunya Lause juga akan bantu terus. Kalau Lause udah lulus di Untar jangan berhenti ya Lause.
iya baik.
Oke. 好了，老师，好，亲
Oke, thank
亲。
you, sir. Ini yang bahas kanol ya kita coba lihat dulu bahas kanol bahkan
Yang benar, Mama. Yang benar. Di situ lah.
kita sambil nunggu teman-teman yang lain ya. Yang ini masih banyak yang belum masuk. Ya untuk HSK 0 masih muridnya di sini baru ada Aaron Ananda ya. Yang lain belum kelihatan loh, sambil menunggu ya.
Saya
Oh,
langsung. Ah,
sambil menunggu semuanya tolong ya buka punya ya. Kamehwa satunya.
aku ikut. Saya langsung. Aku ikut.
Halo, sambil menunggu kita boleh buka dulu ya halaman 15. Halaman 15, Tacia boleh buka dulu. Minggu lalu kita sudah pelajari mengenai pinin ya. Pinin. kita pelajari vokal dan nadanya. Ya, Lausnya sudah suruh kalian untuk berlatih ya di rumah untuk mengulang terus ya a a a. Ini 4 nada utamanya dalam bahasa Mandarin. Sudah Lausnya suruh kalian baca juga ya. Dan Lausnya peringati kalau lebih baik ya dipelajari ulang ya masing-masing di rumah dibaca terus. Oke? Harus stop share dulu. Lumayan ya, sekarang udah masuk. Oke, sebentar ya, Los. Off kamera sebentar.
Oke,
Oke, Halo, 大家好，早上好ya. Selamat pagi semuanya. Oke, kalau akan mulai untuk materi hari ini ya, sebelum itu langsung mau absen dulu, 我们先点名 ya. 点名 itu absen ya. 好，Aaron 在吗？
saya langsung.
Oke. Ananda?
saya langsung.
Oke. Audrey? Audrey 在吗？ Gak ada ya. Darren? Darren ini nggak pernah masuk ya. Farel? Farel ada? Farel juga baru masuk sekali. Oke, Gris saya mah.
翟老师，
好。sebentar. Oke, Mikaela. Mikaela, Rafaela nggak ada ya. Ini juga nggak pernah masuk. Noel? Noel ada? Noel nggak ada ya. Nicholas.
蔡老师，
Oke. Nicholas Abed.
翟老师，
Oke. Shitia. Shitia ada nggak? Shitia. 没有. Ganesha.
翟老师，
Oke, saya. 好. Shelin. Shelin saya mah. Halo, Shelin.
翟老
翟老
师，
师，
Oke, 好. Terakhir Shanesa. Shanesa ada? Nggak ada ya. Berarti yang masuk hari ini cuma 1, 2, 3. Oke. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 个人 ya, 7 orang. Yang lain itu. Oke, Farel baru masuk sih, mah. Halo, Farel, saya mah.
翟老师，
Oke, 好. Berarti 8 个人 ya, 8 orang ya. Noel nggak ada, oke. Hao. Tadi yang seperti sudah Laoshi jelaskan ya di awal. Laoshi kausu nimen, Laoshi kasih tahu kalian untuk buka halaman 15. Coba semua buka dulu halaman 15 di buku masing-masing Mehuan 1. Kita sudah mempelajari ya nada, vokal ya. A, 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 A. Nah, itu kemarin semua sudah baca dan Laoshi sudah dengar ya. Laoshi harap yang Laoshi koreksi kalian pelajari di rumah masing-masing ya. Jadi kita hari ini langsung lanjut ke materi selanjutnya ya. Di sini Taca perhatikan kan Laoshi ya, kan Laoshi. Perhatikan Laoshi. Di sini ada tingli ya, tingli. Tingli itu kemampuan mendengar ya. Jadi di sini perintahnya, ayo dengarkan dan pilihlah jawaban yang tepat. Ya, jadi di sini adalah soal, oke? Soal. Sama. Jadi soal dari nomor 1 sampai 5. Jadi ada 5 soal. Wow. 5 soal ini nanti ya, harus kasih contoh dulu. Lalu kasih contoh, misalkan nomor 1. Semua perhatikan nomor 1. Lalu zoom aja ya, ini biar kelihatan. Nomor 1, semua perhatikan. Di sini ada A, ada gambar A, ada gambar B, ya B yang topi, ada gambar C, kado. Sama, udah ya, udah lihat ya. Contohnya, kalau misalkan nanti Laos bilang soal nomor 1, contoh, sanke, sanke, kira-kira sanke ini kalian harus tahu dulu, sanke itu berapa?
老师，
Kenapa, Grace?
Dan itu kan 3. Ke itu kata penggolong.
Tuh, berarti ada 3 buah.
Iya,
Bagus
kan?
ya, Grace. Ah, sih. Ada 3 buah. Nah, dari yang Laoshi bilang, San ke ada 3 buah, ya. Kalian lihat gambarnya yang mana yang sesuai. Nomor 1 kah? Nomor 2 kah? Yang B? Atau yang C? 3 buah. Ini buah ya, bukan apel ya, bukan pir, bukan pisang ya. Buah itu berapa banyak? Coba ada yang bisa bantu jawab? Jawabannya A, B, atau C?
B.
Nomor 1.
Yang Aaron bilang B. Yang lain?
Nomor 1. Iya, Bella.
Kenapa B?
Soalnya kan
Soalnya kan fun. Tiga.
Karena topi di sini ya, kamu perhatikan topinya ada. Coba hitung sama-sama. I, R.
on.
Baik. Jadi yang harus kasih tahu ya soalnya, soalnya itu langsung bilang sanke. Berarti kalian harus lihat ya gambar mana yang sesuai dengan yang Laoshi kasih tahu. Paham ya? Paham semua?
Paham, Lausa?
Oke, kalau paham,
Lalu,
kita mulai.
itu saya udah kerjain di sekolah pas kelas 1.
Oke, nggak apa-apa. Ini kan kita les ya, jadi kalau kamu di sekolah udah selesai, di sini kita pelajari ulang nggak apa-apa. Dan ini Lause soalnya bakal mungkin beda ya sama yang kamu di sekolah, karena ini Lause bikin sendiri. Oke, Lause mau semuanya ambil kertas dulu. Apa, Ganesha?
Aku ya izin saya
Hershey. Oke, boleh.
Lausa ambil kertas dulu ya, Lausa.
Iya, coba semuanya ambil kertas ya di sini. Kalian coba ambil kertas ya di sini contoh kertas kalian. Tulis 1, 2, 3,
Sabar, Lausa.
5. Ya, ambil pensilnya, pennya, atau buku, apapun itu yang penting kalian tulis.
Apa tadi, Lausa?
Tulis nomornya dulu ya.
Oke.
1 sampai 5.
Oke, Lausa.
Ti, tau, tiu. Ti, tau, tiu ya. 1 sampai 5. Ditulis dulu di kertas kalian.
Udah, Lausa. 1 sampai 5.
Yang lain sudah? Biar
Sudah.
Lause tahu kalian mendengarkan Lause ya.
Apa lagi, Lausa?
Sudah? Kalau
Udah,
sudah,
Lausa. Lausa,
ya,
itu mamaku sakit tuh. Nggak tahu aku sakit apa.
siapa yang sakit?
Mama tadi, dia ke kamar tadi, dia sakit. Nggak tahu aku sakit apa dia. Aku pagi-pagi nggak jawab.
Kamu coba, mungkin boleh lihat Mama dulu.
Dia mama dulu. Udah, tadi aku udah lihat. Tadi aku pas panggil-panggil nggak jawab.
Mama lagi
Kata
tidur kah?
enggak. Tadi pas dia itu pas aku nonton, aku bawa mamaku baik-baik kayak gitu.
Dia bilang dia sakit kah?
Iya, tapi aku nggak tahu aku sakit apa. Kata bapakku ya nggak tahu sakit apa dia.
Ya udah, nanti kamu tanya ya mama sakit apa.
Ya, dia
Sekarang kita kerjain dulu ya. Jadi semua sudah tulis ya. Dengarkan baik-baik. How? Dengarkan baik-baik soalnya ya. Semua perhatikan. Nomor satu. Nomor satu soalnya uke.
buka.
Nomor satu soalnya uke. Pilih jawabannya dan tulis ke kertas kalian.
Buka rasa.
Hanya tulis itu ABC-nya aja kan?
Betul, tulis ABC-nya aja.
Saya selesai.
Nomor satu.
Sudah? Sudah ditulis?
Ini
Udah.
mamaku ini masih sakit. Aku nggak panggil-panggil, aku jawab nggak ada. Nggak tahu aku jawabannya. Ini mama tuh di kamar. Di kamar aku di sana, di sebelah itu. Tuh kan
Kenapa
tujuan.
Nanda harus ada mama kah buat ngerjain ini?
Iya, harus ada mama,
Kamu
ajain aku. Tapi malah dia kayak gitu.
kamu
Malah dia nggak
bisa
tahu aku
kerjain
bang.
sendiri nggak Ananda?
Nggak bisa, aku harus mama yang ngajarin. Tapi mamaku malah sakit. Malah dia aku pagi-pagi nggak jawab, aku tuh ya mama. Pas pagi, mama, sakit apa mama? Lah, aku pagi nggak jawab.
Ananda boleh
Aduh.
belajar kerjain sendiri ya. Mama nggak harus selalu ada di samping Ananda. Ya, kalau sekarang Mama Ananda lagi sakit, Ananda harus bisa kerjain sendiri. Ya, kasihan mamanya. Ya, jangan
Makasih ya
sekolahkan
mama udah
Ananda.
capek. Capek. Lanjut aja langsung. Lausa
Ya,
berarti ini ketika udah selesai kirim ke Lausa.
enggak kirim. Ini kita kerjain bareng-bareng ya.
Oh,
Au.
oke, bisa.
Soal nomor 2, nomor satu tadi uke ya. Sudah ya. Nomor satu uke. Nomor 2, nomor 2 soalnya seke. Seke. Ya, di sini kalian juga belajar menghitung ya. Nomor 2 soalnya itu seke. Seke. Ditulis di jawabannya, ya di kertasnya.
Harusnya nomor 2 apa jawabannya?
Ya, nomor 2 soalnya seke.
Jelas.
Nomor 3. Nomor 3 itu ike. Ike. Tolong jawabannya ditulis ya. Ike. Yang A, B, atau C. Nomor 4. Nomor 4 ya. Yo 2个. Yo 2个. Sorry. 2个 ini sama dengan ya. Nomor 4, 2个. Terakhir, nomor 5, 3个. 3个.
呀，老师，老师
Ya. Kenapa?
nomor 1 tadi soalnya apa?
Nomor 1 itu soalnya uke.
Oke.
Sudah ya? Jawabannya sudah tertulis semua. Sekarang kita akan koreksi.
Oke, Mas.
Kita koreksi dulu ya. Jadi masing-masing tolong koreksi punya kalian sendiri. TI nomor 1. Tadi soalnya itu uke. Coba Nicholas Abed. Nomor
C,
1
Mas.
jawabannya A, B, atau C?
Jawabannya C.
Oke, Hen Hao, bagus sekali. Nicholas ya. Jawabannya itu C, betul. Kenapa C? Karena di kadonya ya, di gambarnya ada 5 ya, 5 kado. Kita coba hitung. I, Er, San, Si, U, ya ada 5. Dan langsung tadi soalnya bilang U, ke. Jadi jawabannya C. Oke. Yang betul dicentang ya. Kalau nomor 2. Nomor 2. 4个. 4个. Coba langsung minta Grace.
Nomor 2 seke jawabannya A.
Oke, kenapa A?
Soalnya kan
Oke, how? Es
Yoi.
krimnya ya, kalau kalian lihat gambarnya di sini ada es krim, ada 4 es krim. Ir, sans, ya. Es krimnya ada 4. Yang betul dicentang lagi. Hal nomor 3. Ike. Soalnya Ike. Aaron, boleh?
A.
A. Betul ya. Karena di sini apa ini?
Ada satu doang.
Tas.
Yang pertama
Tas. Tas kalau pakai bahasa Mandarin itu cuma
Upau.
shu pao, 对. Shu pao ya. Tas sekolahnya cuma 1. Shu pao. Ya, jadi cuman ada 1. Ike ya. Nomor 3 jawabannya A. Nomor 4. Kita lanjut ya langsung. Nomor 4, Laoshi tadi tulis ya ini. Dan Laoshi kasih tahu liang ke. Liang ke itu sebenarnya 2 ya. Jadi kalau kita menghitung ya, menghitung biasa, kita tetap pakai i er ya, i san si ya, pakai er. Ya, kalau mau bilang 2 ya, 2 itu er. Kalau untuk menghitung. Tapi misalkan Laoshi mau kasih tahu ya, misalkan nih pensil Laoshi ada 2. Jadi Laoshi bilangnya liang ke, bukan er ke. Paham? Laoshi bilangnya liang ke. Liang itu sama dengan 2 juga. Hanya cara pemakaiannya berbeda. Tadi Laoshi bilang, 2 ya, i san si. Itu untuk menghitung saja. Itu untuk menghitung ya, angkanya i san si. Kalau mau bilang jumlah barangnya ada berapa, misalkan ada 2, bukan pakai ke, tapi pakai liang ke. Kalian harus tahu ini ya. Jadi bisa pakai liang, bisa pakai Jadi sesuaikan dengan konteks atau kalimat yang ingin kalian kasih tahu. Ya, karena ini ada 2 buah ya. Jadi langsung kasih tahu jumlahnya ada berapa. Jadi langsung pakai liang. Ya, jadi kalau misalkan langsung bilang liang ke, berarti kalian harus tahu, oh langsung minta 2 ya. Nah, di sini nomor 4 yang liang ke 是什么? A, B atau C?
Lagi.
A.
Lagi. Betul. A lagi. Di sini ada siang jiao ya. Siang jiao pisang. Siang jiao nomor 4 itu A. Boleh dicentang lagi. Kalau betul. Ya, yo liang ke siang jiao. Ada 2 pisang. Jadi jawabannya itu A. Nomor 5. San ke. San ke itu sama.
3.
3. B. Oke, Ganesha. Tahu B. San ke. San ke itu 3. Ya. Jadi di sini gambarnya yang 3 ya, jumlahnya 3 itu hamburger. Ya, ada 3. Berarti nomor 5 jawabannya itu B. Coba semua yang betul semua angkat tangan. Yang betul semua boleh angkat tangan. Oke, Noel baru masuk ya, Noel.
Iya lah,
Oke, yang betul semua di sini 1, Arga ya, Chris, Ananda, Aaron, Nicholas, Farel, Shelin. Oke, kalau Ganesha, Ganesha betul berapa? Jawabannya C, A.
Satu loh,
Kenapa? Berapa?
betul 1.
Betul 1. Salah 1 atau betul 1?
Salah 1.
Salah 1. Berarti betul 4 ya.
Iya loh.
Oke, hao. Nih, kuanxi nggak apa-apa. Ini kita latihan ya. Berarti yang lain nilainya 100 ya. Hao. Untuk tingli, ya ini namanya tingli. Kalian mendengarkan soalnya melalui audio. Ya tadi Lausu cuman pakai kata-kata, Lausu cuman kasih tahu doang, dikte doang, dan kalian kerjain. Nah ini contoh tingli ya. Oke, kita coba lanjut ke halaman 16. Semuanya boleh diturunkan dulu tangannya. Kita lanjut ke halaman 16. Di sini kalau kalian sudah buka, tolong diperhatikan. Ya, di sini ada namanya pihua. Pihua itu guratan, ya, atau goresan. Pihua, ya, goresan atau guratan. Jadi ini untuk membantu kalian menulis. Ya, semua tolong perhatikan. Oke, dalam Mandarin ya, kalau kita menulis ada 4. Nah, 4 ini ada 1, 2, 3, 4. Ya, boleh kalian perhatikan yang ada di dalam kotak. Nah, di sini juga ada tanda panah. Kalau kalian lihat, harus pakai spidol merah ya. Tanda panah. Kalian lihat gak? Tanda panah. Ada panahnya.
Biasa.
Ini panah. Nah, itu panah yang membantu kalian menulis. Jadi mulainya menulis dari mana? Nah, kalau coba semua perhatikan nomor 1. Yang nomor 1 panahnya itu dari ini kiri ya, dari kiri ke kanan. Jadi kita menulis dari kiri ke kanan. Seperti itu. Kalau panahnya dari atas ke bawah, berarti kita tulisnya dari atas ke bawah. Ya. Jadi kita ikuti si panahnya. Ya, kalau dia melengkung, melengkung dari atas ke bawah. Ini juga sama. Paham? Jadi ikuti panahnya. Nah, di sini itu ada nama-namanya. Kalau kalian perhatikan, itu ada nama. Heng, nomor 1 itu namanya Heng. Heng itu lurus. Vertikal. Vertikal. Heng, ya. Heng itu lurus. Heng. Kalau nomor 2 dari atas ke bawah, kayak menulis angka 1 ya, itu artinya, ya ini kita bilangnya shu. Shu. Lurus, tegak ya. Shu. Nah, artinya lurus. Horizontal. Ya. Shu itu horizontal. Pie nomor 3 namanya pie, dia melengkung ya. Pie, pie, kalian bisa lihat ya pinginnya di sini. Pie artinya apa?
Melengkung. Biasa melengkung.
Oke,
Melengkung.
melengkung ya.
Tadi yang su apa?
Shu itu lurus tegak, horizontal ya.
Ya.
Shu. horizontal atau
Terus
tegak lurus. Kalau pie melengkung tadi, betul. Ya.